Yeah, I mean, I work for the Community Fund, the National Lottery Community Fund, so we are one of the kind of 4 lottery distributors. Obviously, a percentage of your lottery ticket money goes to good causes, so we are the kind of community aspect of that. We focus on community activity and community projects. You've got other distributors who focus on sports or arts or heritage, but we are very much the kind of the community funder. We like to fund community projects. That could be geographical communities and that could be thematic communities. So we kind of changed the way we worked a few years ago, and we work in a kind of place-based model now where funding officers will cover certain geographic areas. I work for the Highlands and Islands team, and we've got other teams you can see there. We've got a North East team, a Central and Fife team, and other teams that kind of cover local authority areas in Scotland. So Highlands and Islands is my team. We kind of cover Orkney, Shetland, Highland, Western Isles and Argyll and Bute, and I am the kind of primary funding officer for Argyll and Bute. So my job is to kind of deal with all the applications, inquiries, managing grants in the Argyll and Bute area. The thinking behind that was that we would get to know areas better and get to know groups better and get to know what kind of services were available in local communities. So we can make more informed judgments basically when making deciding on applications, because before funding officers mainly just worked across Scotland, and a lot of the times we didn't really have a clue what was going on in these local areas. So the thinking behind the place-based model is now that we can get to know groups, we can kind of get to know what's going on in local areas and where the funding perhaps should go. Part of my role is also going to visit lots of groups in Argyll and Bute, which is great fun. So basically, just in general terms, we've got a variety of different funding programmes that kind of cover different themes and offer different amounts, but in general we do fund all sorts of community activity, and you can see some examples there. Quite varied stuff that we can fund. You can see gala days, we can fund survivors of abuse, day trips, lots of community activity around allotments, things like that, befriending activity, mental health support, addiction support, but more kind of more community focused stuff around play equipment for nurseries. It's just a wide variety of different activities that we can fund. Obviously some of these activities fit into programmes better than others, but I'll kind of go on now and kind of let you know what kind of programmes we can offer at the moment. So if you want to, so this is just a kind of a little general guide on what kind of organisations we can fund. We can fund charities, SCIOs, we can fund all types of CICs, companies limited with guarantee, and we can also fund constituted groups. You don't necessarily have to be a charity or a company to apply for lottery funding, as long as you've got a constitution. What we don't fund though is individuals or kind of profit making companies. Simple as some of the things that we can fund through our programmes. Mainly revenue funding at the moment for lottery programmes. We don't really have a lot of capital funding, so it's mainly revenue based at the moment. We can do some small capital projects through some of our smaller programmes, but this is mainly revenue we're looking at here. So we can fund salaries, we can fund running costs for organisations, travel costs, we can fund refurbishment of buildings, as long as that's not too expensive a project. As I say, we've got limited capital funding. We can fund equipment costs, marketing costs. We've got special interventions around COVID responses and cost of living responses. So we do fund a wide variety of things and a wide variety of costs. What we can fund is things maybe focused around religion or political views. So this is our most popular funding programme. Some of you might be aware of this programme. This is a small grants programme called Awards for All. At the moment, you can apply for between £300 up to £10,000, and it's very, very broad community programme. So we can fund all sorts of community activities. We can fund sports projects, one-off events, we can fund equipment-only projects, start-up costs, pilot projects, things like that, anything that's going to benefit your community. So as I said earlier, it could be a geographic community, and that's, to be honest, where most of our focus goes, kind of grassroots geographic community funding. But as I said before, we can also fund thematic projects, so it could be like a mental health project or an addiction project, a programme around isolation. So we can fund thematic stuff, but most of the things we fund through Awards for All would be geographic, community, grassroots activity. So this is a kind of breakdown of the other programmes that we offer beyond Awards for All. This is our kind of larger programmes. I'll just give you a kind of brief breakdown of the programmes here, and then I'll go into a bit more detail later on. But we've got what's called Improving Lives, which is very much a kind of targeted, peer-led programme around supporting challenging circumstances. So you can get up to 3 years funding, and that's up to £200,000. We've got the Young Start programme, which is a youth-led programme. You can get up to £100,000 over 3 years. That has to be very much youth-led. Young people have to be at the heart of that project activity. We've also got the community-led programme, which is very much about community anchor organisations delivering kind of wellbeing activity for local communities. So that is a programme that's focused in geographic community rather than thematic. You can get up to £150,000 over 3 years. And then the final one there is the Scottish Land Fund, which, as I say, is not actually lottery money. That's Scottish Government money, but that's a Scottish Government programme that we administer, and that provides groups opportunities to take over local assets. So that is a kind of capital programme, but it's not actually lottery funding. It's Scottish Government funding that we can administer. So this is the kind of themes that run through the programmes that I've just mentioned. Improving Lives focuses on projects that are kind of quite targeted, provide ongoing intense support, and they would focus on themes around kind of children, young people in challenging circumstances, projects around isolation and loneliness, projects supporting people who survived abuse, or projects against challenge discrimination, and finally we kind of look at financial hardship now as well with the cost of living crisis. So Improving Lives covers those main themes, and just to repeat, Improving Lives is the kind of 3-year programme up to £200,000. Again, Young Start's the next one there. That's got to be very much youth-led, and the kind of beneficiaries would have to be young people between 8 and 24. So we got a lot of kind of youth groups, youth activity through that programme, and the community-led, again, is round about neighbourhood level wellbeing work, so it's got to be locally led. Applicants to that programme should be kind of have open membership, be community anchor organisations, have a kind of widespread representation, local representation on their board, have a kind of healthy local membership, so it's very much focused on the geographic community, and again you can get up to £150,000 over 3 years through that community-led programme. So this applies to the kind of bigger programmes that we offer. This is called what we call the free approaches. So these run through kind of Improving Lives and community-led and Young Start. They're quite self-explanatory. I can give you a brief rundown of what this actually means. People-led is really round about how you involve the beneficiaries of your projects, whether that be thematic or geographic. So how do you involve people with lived experience? So for example, if it was a project focused on mental health, is there people with lived experience of mental health on your board? Are there volunteers involved there who can provide peer support who maybe experienced mental health? How do you consult with people who have had mental health issues in the past? It's all about how you involve people in your project. Strength-based is more around how you use local assets, so that could be individuals who have good talents and skills that you can use to help deliver your project. It could be physical assets around buildings or other groups that you work with, so that's all about using local assets, about local asset building. And connected is self-explanatory, it's around about how you work with other organisations in your area. So as Ali mentioned earlier, we don't tend to like to fund any sort of duplication of activity. We like to see we fund projects where there's one group who are maybe focused on something but they work alongside other groups, so that could be statutory bodies like the council, could be other volunteer organisations, things like that, just to make sure that you're connected together and you're not duplicating work that other organisations in your area are doing. We like to see kind of strong referral pathways in place as well for projects, so that we know that projects are kind of getting access to the most vulnerable who need that support. So that runs through all the bigger programmes. In terms of Awards for All, we like to see strong community-focused, people-led projects, but we're not as fixated on the other two approaches for Awards for All, because that's a smaller programme with smaller amounts of money involved. So this is just some key messages and tips from me if you're applying for lottery funding. So the key message would be that you can apply for grants from £300 upwards, so you don't necessarily have to have a massive project. It could be a £300 project, a small community project. You can apply to Awards for All for that. It doesn't necessarily have to be big money. Awards for All is up to £10,000, and that is our most popular programme. So we do fund lots of smaller projects. It doesn't have to be large projects. The larger programmes you can see there, we can fund up to 3 years, so we can't provide multi-years funding. Awards for All is only 1 year at the moment, but all the other programmes you can get up to 3 years funding. We can fund core costs and existing activity, so just to make that clear, a lot of funders like to fund brand new projects that have never been done before. We can fund your core activity and your existing activity, so we can fund continuation funding and stuff to sustain your existing work. You don't have to be a charity apply apply. As I said earlier, you could just be a constituted group, so there's no need to be a charity or a company to apply for our funds. We can fund up to 100% of project costs. Match funding would be preferred for the larger projects, because it kind of shows you've got the support there, but we can fund 100% of costs. And if you've previously got a grant, you can apply again. There's no time limit on how often you can apply. You can't have two grants for the same funding programme at the same time, but once that grant is ended, you can reapply for that fund if you want to do so. In terms of kind of tips for applying for funding, what I would say is just give yourself plenty of time, gather all the info that you need, and just make sure you do your project justice. Don't rush into an application form. Have a think about it and what you actually want to apply for. And as David said earlier on, what I would encourage people to do is have a look on the website for a funder. Look on our website, it gives you all the programmes, all the criteria, all the stuff that we're looking for, so have a look on the website before you apply. I would also encourage anybody to phone the funder before. I'd like to say that in the last 12 months we've funded 65 projects in Gaelan Butte. We're one of the biggest funders in Scotland. So that's quite a lot of projects to fund in 1 year. We've funded 65. So the next couple of slides are just kind of where you can get further information. We do a blog every now and again, and again that gives you some information on the latest programmes and tips on how to apply. So that's the kind of website address there for the blog. You can sign up for that. And again, we do a monthly newsletter as well, so that you can kind of sign up for my email for that, and we'll send it out to every month, and that gives hints and tips and examples of the funding, case studies, things like that. Thank you very much.